Hi guys, how you going? Campbell here from Autodidactic channel. Hope you're having an amazing day. And as always guys, autodidactic means to be self-educated, and in this world we all need to be self-educated. Because if you're not, you are only left with one option, and that is to believe whatever you're told. And we of course know that what we're told is pretty much completely false, especially when it comes to our story and what happened in the past. So today I wanted to have another look at the USA, America, back in the 1700s, and we're going to have a look at the area, I think it's Virginia, is it? Around Richmond, Richmond, Virginia. And so what I was doing, I was looking into the whole free black slave thing, because if you look in the history of America, there's these free, what they call free slaves, or free, black people, and it's if you read the stories, it's what it sounds like is these guys were these guys were already there. They weren't slaves brought in; they were the natives that were already there. They had houses, they had the tech and everything. And when you read these stories about these free slaves, they're a bit strange. They just don't make sense. There's a lot of backpedaling, so we'll get into this, but just remember, you need to read between the lines in stories like this. It'll become evident what's going on. But so what I thought I'd do is have a look at some of the inventions, and I came across Benjamin Banneker. He invented the Farmer's Almanac. Was first published, the Farmer's Almanac, in 1792. Banneker was also the first black American inventor. Okay, so we have this guy, Benjamin Banneker. Benjamin Banneker. This is a drawing done in the 1940s, 43, so that's not a portrait or anything. And it's really, what he's got here is a sextant for mapping the skies, astrology, a little ball for astrology. And he did some surveying as well, even though this has got like one of these domes on top with little bits coming out. Looks a bit techy, I don't know, but I'm sure they're going to say that's a surveyor's tool. So Benjamin was born November 9, 1731. He was a free African American. He was an author, a surveyor, a naturalist, a farmer. Born in Baltimore County, Maryland, to free African-American woman and a former slave. Banneker had little formal education and was largely self-taught. He was autodidactic. He is known for being part of a group led by Major Andrew Ellicott that surveyed the original borders of the District of Columbia, the federal capital district of the United States. Banneker's knowledge of astronomy helped him author a commercially successful series of almanacs. They were farming almanacs, so that was based on seasons, so that the farmers could, and also based on seasons and how to grow crops in the Americas, guys. So he had knowledge of the seasons and the stars and astrology from the the Americas point of view, and this is what these guys had come halfway around the world. All the seasons and stuff were different; they weren't sure, but he seemed to know. He corresponded with Thomas Jefferson on topics about slavery, racial equality, of course. And here we go. Although a fire on the day of Banneker's funeral destroyed many of his papers and belongings, one of his journals and several of his remaining artifacts are presently available for public viewing. Park, school, streets, and other tributes have been commemorated to Banneker. So on the day of his funeral, his house burns down and all his papers, all his research, everything basically about him is gone. And we're left with one journal and a few artifacts. Okay, burn. They just repeat the process, right? Now, if we come down here, basically, a bit more about the genealogy, because what they're doing is they're trying to say, look, this guy had to have been related, had to have had white genealogy. Otherwise, how do they explain that he was a free black man in America in the 1700s? Benjamin Banneker was born, blah, 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 to a freed slave woman, Mary, and a freed slave, Robert, from Guinea. There are two conflicting accounts of Banneker's family history. Banneker himself and his earliest biographers described him as having only African ancestry. None of Banneker's surviving papers describe a white ancestor or identify the name of his grandmother. Okay, now, it says here that Banneker himself described him as having only African ancestry. Now, we don't know that. All his papers were destroyed in the fire on the day of his funeral, and so they can say whatever they want. Oh yeah, he said he was African. That's, that doesn't mean anything, guys. Later biographers contended that Banneker's mother was the child of Molly Welsh, a white indentured servant. So this is the thing, again, even if she's white, he's a black man, she's got to be a servant, right? And an African slave named Banneker. So the first published description of Molly Welsh was based on interviews with her descendants that took place in 1836, over 100 years after her life, long after the death of both Molly and Benjamin. A genealogist has noted that the same Banneker may have had the same origin as the village of Banneker in today's Liberia, which is Spain. They still have a country called Liberia in the west coast of Africa, which is, slap bang in the middle of Moor country, the Moors, which at the time was part of the slave trade. So this is, again, they're just trying to tie him back to slavery. It's so obvious. Banneker was named at the age of 6 on the deed of his family's 100-acre farm in the Patapsco Valley area in Baltimore country. The remainder of his early life is not well documented. As a young teenager, he may have met and befriended Peter Heinrichs, a Quaker who established a school near the Banneker farm. Quakers were leaders in the anti-slavery movement and advocates of racial equality. Okay, notable works. At the age of 21, he reportedly completed a wooden clock that struck on the hour, which is a good achievement for 1753. He appears to have modelled his clock from a borrowed pocket watch by carving each piece to scale. The clock reportedly continued until his death. So what did this clock look like? This is the clock. Okay, this is Benjamin Banneker on a stamp, a few pictures of him. And this is the clock. Now, does that look like a pocket watch to you? That's a pocket watch. That's not. And this looks like it's the internal workings of it. So what I'm saying here, guys, that wouldn't fit in your pocket, right? But they say that he built this clock by carving each piece to scale. If it was to scale, what scale are they talking? Like, that's not round. This is a big square clock, and he's saying it's a scale to that. That doesn't make sense. Of course, he could have scaled it up, made it bigger, but this looks like a completely different. It looks nothing like a pocket watch. And this is, again, the thing, they've got to say, well, he couldn't have had the knowledge to build a clock. He must have, got someone's pocket watch and taken it apart? Like, carved every piece to scale, worked out how it all worked, and then put it back together. Really? Come on. So yeah, and then he also basically was a surveyor. In February 1791, surveyor Major Andrew Ellicott, the son of Joseph Ellicott and cousin of George Ellicott, U.S. Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson, a surveying team in West New York that he had been leading, hired Banneker as a replacement to assist the initial survey of the boundaries of the new federal district. So he basically was the surveyor. They got him, it says it a bit better in this one. Let's have a look. So Banneker's talents and intelligence eventually came to the attention of the Ellicotts. George Ellicott had a large personal library and loaned Banneker numerous books on astronomy and other fields. So they're trying to say now that he learnt all this stuff from this guy's library. In 1791, Andrew Ellicott, George's cousin, hired Banneker to assist in surveying a territory of the nation's capital. He worked in the observatory tent using a zenith sector to record the movement of the stars. However, due to a sudden illness, Banneker was only able to work for about 3 months. So he was out there mapping the stars for them. And as we've seen the layouts on the ground of cities like Washington, and they're all, symmetrical patterns, geomancy, all this stuff. So was he in there helping them with this kind of, the astronomy bits of it? It's just a very sort of strange story. Down here it says he never married, continued to conduct his scientific studies throughout his life. In 1797 his almanac had declined and his discontinued publication. In the following years he sold off much of his farm to the Ellicotts, oh really, and others to make ends meet, and continued to live in his log cabin. Died 1806 in his sleep, just short of his 75th birthday. Never married, had no kids. So basically he was the end of his lineage. The end of the line. And this guy, it just sounds a lot like he was, he was descendants of natives. He wasn't a slave. With all the knowledge he had, it just doesn't make sense. This is just a bit on Southampton that I was reading. This is in Virginia, Southampton County. They built the first courthouse in 1752, and it says it was, so it's just really the dates here, during the 17th century, shortly after the establishment of Jamestown in 1607. So this Banneker guy, he was actually alive, over 100 years after that. So there was enough time that, he may have not known what was going on, and he may have been told he was a black slave, but he was obviously educated with some kind of knowledge that was passed down to him. But yeah, over 100 years, they can wipe a lot in 100 years. And so I was looking at Richmond, Virginia. This is sort of the main town in Virginia. Now, I'm from Australia, of course, so I haven't, been to Virginia or Richmond, so I may get a few things wrong here. But if you know more about this, let me know, because it's a fairly interesting story. And it all goes into, obviously, 1812, and then we've got the Civil War, and all this stuff happens. But it basically just says Richmond was incorporated, and I love how they use these words, guys. Again, it's all doublespeak, legalese. Incorporated in 1742 and has been an independent city since 1871. The city's population is 200,000, blah, blah, blah. History. After the first permanent English-speaking settlement was established in April 1607 at Jamestown, explorers went northward up the Jamestown River to an area inhabited by the Powhatan Native Americans. The earliest European settlement in central Virginia was in 1611 at Hericus, where the Falling Creek empties into the James River. In 1619, the Virginia Company settlers struggling to establish viable money-making industries, and this is what it's all about. You see, they've come in, they've found a society that wasn't based on money, and all they want to do is take over everything, own it, and make everything about money and industry. The guys that they've, the culture they found there, they were doing pretty well, and they destroyed it. After decades of territorial conflicts with native tribes, the falls of the James saw more white settlements in the late 1600s and 1700s. And then it goes on to, they started a power station, an iron foundry, and then they had battles over it with the Indians. And basically it just looks like they were just taking over all the industry, all the buildings, and they were just pushing the Indians out, all the Native Americans out, and they just stole all their tech. This is what happened. So this just goes into Civil War and all this kind of stuff. We know that from basically all of the 1800s in America, it was just war and destroying towns and tech and pushing people around to different areas. But I found this. This is a map. This is by John Smith. And just looking at this is 1609, I believe. Pretty good map, but look at the amount of towns. Look at this. this place is completely built out. You can see there's cities drawn in here. We have Opifico, Pajmunko. There's even one called here, Cut at a Woman. It's a bit of a strange name. But yeah, there's towns everywhere here. Acohannock. And if you put these names into Google, they're all the names of what we're called, tribes, basically. So this is one of the towns. It was called Powhatan. And if you put it in, you'll find that Powhatan were a people made to refer the indigenous Algonquian people that are traditionally from Eastern Virginia. So these are, it's all on that map now. I haven't had a look at a map of Virginia from today, or Richmond, just to compare. I haven't done that yet, but that would be an interesting thing to do, because there's a lot of towns there, and it looks like I would think that all the new, or all the current cities, the big ones in Virginia, are just on top of these older cities that are here. All these things. Because they've just moved in and taken over it. Because if you look, and I had a bit of a look at the architecture, here's another one, and it's filled with old world architecture, this Richmond, Virginia I looked at. So this is what they all found in the 1600s, and you can see the whole place is completely built out. We have this picture. I'm guessing that's showing us a native. Interesting look. This is just crowns and everything. We're doing it for the crown, Virginia, and then we get this status register. So this is the chief, I guess, sitting there with his feathers and stuff. So yeah, this is what they found. Much different to what we're told. It wasn't that they walked into an empty land, and with a few sort of native tribes living around. It was actually, if you look into the numbers, it's estimated that there were about 14 to 20,000 Powhatan in Eastern Virginia when the English colonized it in 1607. In the late 16th and 17th centuries, Manitowic chief created a powerful organization affiliating 30 tributary peoples whose territory were much of Eastern Virginia. They called this area Tescanamo. I'm not even going to try. But basically it comes down here and says now they're all dead. After his death in 1618, hostilities with the colonists escalated under the chiefdom of his brother. His large-scale attacks in 1622 and 1624 met with strong reprisals by the English, resulting in the near annihilation of the tribe by 1646. And again, this is a story we get. So these are obviously lots of people, civilized people. They've got towns, they've got cities, they've got buildings, and the invaders come in with their bang sticks, and start shooting everyone, telling them to get out of the cities. We now own it. We've incorporated this as our state now. And the Indians, tried to get their stuff back a few times while making attacks, tried to get their cities back, and that just gave the English the excuse to just go and wipe them all out and say, yeah, no, they just kept attacking us. And this is how history goes, written by the winners. So these are just some of the buildings in Richmond, Virginia, and you can just see, this is the same stuff, right? Look at this, just straight down the street. And they're all mud flooded. See this? You can see all the stairs, and they've got bits underground. And just complete old world architecture everywhere. Excuse me, look at this one. Look at all these windows up here. Nice big clock tower, spire. So this is what's around, and so this is what they've walked into and what they've found back in the 1600s. You can see it's got tram lines, or used to. I'm not sure what year this is, but just Tartarian type buildings all the way down the street. So this is what they've walked into. Even look at this, it's still got the domes on top. That's been completely retrofitted. You can see they've changed out these windows and everything. So this is what all these wars are about, guys. It was about the Indians trying to get this mud flutter. About the Indians trying to get their property back that was literally stolen from them. Or, you know, when I say Indians, the natives who were living there. Like I said, I'm not sure what the mix was, because obviously there's, you know, it looks like there's different characteristics, traits between what we know as Indians and what we know as native, sort of black Americans, African Americans, sorry. But they must have all just been part of one nation. I'm not really sure, but they were definitely all out there. And in the southern half of the USA at least, it looks different up in the north, but in the southern half, they were still using these buildings. Okay, so this, you know, here's, you can see it all, what was built. You know, tons of this stuff, bridges, just the classic stuff we see where, you know, big statues and towers and and yeah, just the old world architecture just everywhere. And it was there from, you know, it was there in the beginning. Look at this, back with the horse and cart, and it's just built out down the whole street, done everything. Oh, we've got movement. Look at that. Wow. Alright, so where am I now? Here. So this is Chief Vann, and this is his house. So the Chief Vann house is the first brick residence in the Cherokee Nation, so they say, and has been called the showplace of the Cherokee Nation. Owned by the Cherokee Chief James Vann, and these don't sound like very native names, do they? James Vann and Benjamin Buchanan, was it? National Register of Historic Places and one of the oldest remaining structures in the northern third of the state of Georgia. It is located in Murray Country on the outskirts of Chatsworth in northwest Georgia. So down here it says, when James Vann was rising to become the wealthiest businessman and chief in the Cherokee, he decided to build a two-story brick house which would reflect his status. He brought in professional architects for its design, in addition to providing an education to local Cherokees. So this is 1800. Okay, so again, this just does not make sense with the narrative we're given. This is a chief, a Cherokee chief, a native who is in America, and he's now one of the wealthiest businessmen in the Cherokee Nation, and he's getting architects in and building brick houses. Okay. And then it just goes on about the house, and they, you know, try and explain, you know, badly. They just over-explain how, oh, no, definitely. You got people in to build it. It wasn't built by Cherokee. It definitely wasn't there beforehand. So Rich Joe Vann's house. After Rich Joe's father died, he made improvements and changed to the house. After Rich, he took control of the home to become commissioned and paid for decorated the house between 1809. So this is Chief Joseph Vann. Look at this guy. Now, does he look like what you would think, the picture you'd get when you thought of a Native American? That's what they say. They say that's him. I mean, that, really? Chief, what's his name? Chief James Vann. I'm going to see if I can get a picture of him, because that's just a bit weird. Okay, so yeah, this is his house. No, that's where we've been. This is, whoops. Gosh, I've got too many things. This is the house here. And as you can see, it's a mud flutter. So he didn't build it. You don't build houses in the ground. Look at this. You see that? Okay, this is a mud flutter. Nice brick building. Greco-Roman, as we're told, out the front here. Steps going up. Windows into the ground. And this is the house that the chief built. And if we go back here, you'll see there is a plaque. the Chief Vann house. So here is the plaque. We've got the house in the background here. Built of locally made brick in 1804, this house, the finest in the Cherokee Nation, that's hinting at there were other houses in the Cherokee Nation, was the home of a town chief, James Vann, son of a Scotch trader. So now they're going to try and say that he has white heritage and all this, and that's why but he's chief of the Cherokees. Son of a Scotch trader, Clement Vann, and his wife, a Cherokee chieftain's daughter. Around his home were several of his business ventures and many acres of land filled by his slaves, filled by his slaves, sponsor of Spring Place mission, blah, blah, blah. So what they're saying straight away is he was half white. Okay, so if you're in a country and you get invaded, you're living nice, and these invaders come in and they start stealing all your land and, killing people, taking your women, all this kind of stuff. And then one of them, well, first of all, would the chief let one of his daughters marry a white person? I mean, we hear these stories about that's been done to try and make peace and that, but I mean, they're just Hollywood stories, really. And then if there was a child from that, would you let a half person who was, half from your world and half from the invaders' world run, your nation? It doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correct, but like if this guy was half white, I don't think he would be the leader of the Cherokees, is what I'm trying to say. Sorry, I keep losing my pages. This guy. Oh, that's not him. Oh, that is him. Okay. So this is James Vann. And it says influential Cherokee leader. So he looks pretty Indian there, doesn't he? And then we get these. Alright, let's see what we get. So we get this, which is tiny. Can't see that. So that look, you can see the big broad nose and the cheekbones and things, even the hairstyle, and just looking what we would call Native American. And then we get these pictures, which looks like a completely different dude. Look at this drawing. This is just silly. Can you see that? Here's another one. Looks like a little drawing, but that looks pretty Indian. These guys, this is just a painting as well, you got to understand. This is like a Renaissance painting. He's suddenly this white guy. This is how they change the story. So here's their nice little setup in some museum somewhere, and it's got him, and it's because this area as well is Pocahontas country, but I mean that would have been a couple hundred years before this, so I don't think she's actually anything to do with the person he married. But look, we just get this picture of him, and this looks like, I don't know when he died, but this is definitely a different person to this. Excuse me. This is his burial site, but yeah, so not getting a lot there. James Vann and Chief Black Fox, Chief James Vann Cherokee. Let's see. I mean, it's the same thing. And what's this? Is that going to say that that's him? Chief, it just says a Cherokee chief. Now look at that. Major, is that Ridge? Major Ridge, a Cherokee chief. So who are the Cherokee guys? Look at this guy. Look at his clothes. Looking very, what we're called African American. And this is This is what we get. Just a confused story. Now, they're not saying that was this guy. They're just saying he's another Cherokee. But, you know, look at that to that. That's a different person. Then they're going to say that all these pictures are the same, no doubt. David Vann. So this, I wonder who he is. Look at that again. I mean, look at this guy. Look at that face. So this guy's obviously a descendant. David Vann was a sub-chief who was elected treasurer of the Cherokee Nation. Treasurer of the Cherokee Nation in 1839. Now, does that give you the image that we're normally given of the Native American? They had a nation and they had treasurers and they were out there doing industry. It's not what we're told, is it? Second son of Avery Vann and his wife Margaret McSwan. And also the names. Now, he's an Indian chief called David. It's just a bit weird. The Cherokee Nation, also known as the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, is the largest of three Cherokee federally recognized tribes. So they have to be recognized, okay, in the United States. It was established in the 20th century and includes people descended from the members of the old Cherokee Nation. 1794 to 1907 was a legal, autonomous tribal government in North America recognized from 1794 to 1907, often referred to as simply the nation by its inhabitants. So what was going on here? Then it says, blah, 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 the old Cherokee Nation who relocated from the southeast due to increasing pressure to Indian Territory, and Cherokee who were forced to relocate to the Trail of Tears. So what that is, they were kicked out of their cities and homes at gunpoint and told to go away, and if you don't, we'll kill you. If you come back, we'll kill you. Of course, they came back a few times, and these are put down as, you know, Indian uprisings and all this stuff. But what it was is they were trying to get back what was theirs, what was stolen from them. In the end, you know, the parasites basically wiped them all out. But they literally marched them out of their houses, you know, with nothing, with only the clothes on their back. And so you can imagine they've just had to go out and start camping, and that's turned into their lifestyle. And they didn't have any of their tech they could take or any of their bits. And so, you know, over a couple of generations, you know, you give it this 100 years, 1600 to 1700, and so much of that knowledge would just be gone because they would just be focused on surviving, you know, rather than telling the stories of their past. So this is how they change history. The Cherokee Nation has a tribal jurisdiction area spanning 14 counties in the northeast corner of Oklahoma. During 1898 to 1906, beginning with the Curtis Act of 1898, the United States federal government all but dissolved the former Cherokee Nation's government and civic institutions. Civic institutions. To make way for the incorporation, okay, legalese, double speak, so basically and these guys wouldn't have known they wouldn't have been a party to it. So a way to incorporate the Indian Territory into the new state of Oklahoma. From 1906 to 1938, the structure and function of the tribal government was not clearly defined. After the dissolution of the tribal government of the Cherokee Nation in the 1900s and the death of William Charles Rogers in 1917, the federal government began to appoint chiefs to the Cherokee Nation in 1919. So they just took over and they just put their own people in charge. So this was obviously a massive nation with a lot of pull. You know, they obviously knew about the tech. They were using it, and these guys were just trying to get it away from them, trying to, you know, get rid of them, and just bit by bit, like they do. You know, it's like David Icke calls it the totalitarian toe-step. Totalitarian tiptoe, where they just keep going forward and they just keep going, yeah, we'll give you this, but underneath they're just, you know, wiping you out, and before you know it, they've dissolved your country, You don't have any legal stature in their eyes. They're the ones with the guns, and then they start appointing your leaders for you. And, that's how you kill a society and their knowledge. And then it comes down here more, and it's just all about how it's all to do with legal stuff and incorporation, and they use that all to kick people out and then to basically destroy their nations. Here's another second Cherokee female seminary in Tallakesh. The Cherokee Female Seminary services as the centerpiece of Northeastern State University, located in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, United States. The building was constructed to replace the original, of course they always are, to replace the original Cherokee Female Seminary that burnt to the ground Easter Sunday, 1887. I mean, God, they're not even clever with they put so much focus on their bloody, their dates and numbers and their weird bloody religious thoughts that they can't even get the stories to make sense. But yeah, so this again was built by the Cherokees. Why would they need a seminary? I mean, look at this thing, and again, that's a mud flutter. Look at the bottom of it, but this is the kind of stuff that they walked into in 1609. This is what they found. It's, again, legalese, right? They tell us that towns were founded. No, they just found. They just put the ED on the end. A seminary is a training college for priests and rabbis. Okay? Priests and rabbis. Second Cherokee Female Seminary. What? I mean, what? Why would they have a seminary? Why would they have a building that size to be teaching female Cherokees things about religion and Judaism? That just doesn't make sense. Cherokee Nation Historic Courthouse. Built 1849, so they say. See this nice bit out the front as well. But this is what they were living in, guys. So there we go. I think I'm probably going to wrap it up there. I just wanted to show you that, the story we're given, obviously, his story is not our story. But with a bit of searching, you can see that the Cherokee Nation was out there. A bit more reading, and you find there's other nations out there, and they talk about confederacies and things back in the 1800s, in inverted commas, Indian nation confederacies. So there's all this stuff going on, and then there's just all this legalese speak comes in about incorporating towns and all this kind of stuff. But what it just so looks like is they've walked in, they've found a civilization that's living in these buildings. I'm not sure how much of the tech they were using, if any, but they were using stuff. And they've just pushed the people out and just destroyed the history, told them not to speak about it, and then rewritten it over the top. And they haven't even done the rewrite very well. But so I hope that was interesting. Thanks for spending some time with me, guys. Remember, to be autodidactic, because self-education is the way forward. If we keep standing by and believing the stories we're told, we cannot move forward. So thanks, have an amazing day, and I'll catch you on the next upload. Bye for now.